People sometimes ask me what breathing practices or pranayama has to do with meditation. And my answer is pretty much everything. The genius of the system of yoga that was established a couple of thousand years ago called Ashtanga is that it provided different entry points for people with different tolerances or temperaments for yoga and specifically for meditation practices. In a modern context, most of what people do these days in the West is called asana or movement practice, which, done in a certain respect with a certain intention, can be meditation. The second phase of this is called pranayama or breathing and requires a little bit more refinement of practice both in body and mind, but serves as a great place for people to start who want to get into meditation but are afraid to sit and watch their thoughts. So today, that's what we're exploring is the application of these practices called pranayama as a basis for meditation. Hi, I'm Steve from Steve White Yoga, bringing you the application of yoga to manage your health, improve your relationships, and balance your life. Come on and take a trip with me on Yoga Beyond the Mat as we explore pranayama. So welcome to yet another session of mindfulness. Thank you so much for joining. We're going to, I keep looking for kind of new and interesting ways to present this stuff so it isn't always the same all the time. And I picked a direction because it's one that I'm really quite fond of, as well as quite familiar with. From the yoga world, it's known as pranayama, which are breathing practices. And as it happens, it dovetails nicely into something I'm doing tonight. And I invite you all, if you have nothing better to do at 7 p.m. We do this every week. It's an exploration of the Yoga Sutras, which is one of the primary texts of yoga. And we're right at the point in the Yoga Sutras where they talk about this particular set of practices called pranayama. So we're going to have sort of an experience of that today. And the encouragement is, from my standpoint, that breathing isn't just breathing. There's a particular sort of magic to these practices, and in general to just improving the quality of your breath. So that's sort of the exploration we're going to begin today, and we'll continue it also, or continue it further on Thursday. So it's not exactly mindfulness in the sort of modern context, the way people think of mindfulness, but these are all mindfulness practices in a broader sense. And so that's where we're going. So please join along. This is Swami Rama, who's one of the most famous or influential, I should say, of modern day yogis, although he's been deceased for some time, for 15 years or something like that, but has had a profound effect on the modern day yoga community in the US. He says control over breath is control over life. So there's not a tremendous body of Western science to sort of support the contentions that have been made about what pranayama does. But on the other hand, I think it was the psychologist Carl Jung who was quoted as saying something like, after having studied the yogic tradition, he said something like, these people have finished the book and we're barely on the third chapter. The implication being that there's something to this that may ultimately be supported by science, or it may go beyond it, or it may just be a bunch of hooey. But there are zillions of practitioners who would suggest that this is supported, whether there are controlled randomized studies that support it or not. So among the things that we know are true of a consistent breathing practice with particular intention, reducing blood pressure, lowering resting heart rate, positively impacting sleep, even reducing inflammation has been shown, regulating or eliminating depression, anxiety, stress, improving mental focus, supporting immunity, increasing vitality. These are some of the many claims that are made in regard to this. So we'll sort of approach it casually today and start with, sort of the idea, what does it mean to be breathing better? So, first of all, it's just to be more conscious of the breath. And, we're sort of already in this universe for those of you who have been following along with this, because we've been following the breath now for weeks. And so becoming conscious is the first step. You can't change something that you're not aware of. And this idea of consciousness gets more and more refined, I would say, over time. Then the idea of allowing the body to breathe, which is to say, to first not make an effort with this, but just to follow it. Much like we're doing in all of these mindfulness practices, the idea is to let it be what it is and just pay attention to it. And so that's sort of beginning steps. And then we begin to create some control or manipulation of the breath with a technique that's called valving in the yoga world. And this is a regulation of the breath with two purposes in mind. One is to make ultimately a longer inhale and longer exhale. And the other is to bring mental and energetic awareness to the process of breathing. So there are a couple of different ways to do this, and we're going to real briefly experiment with all three today. Some of this may be incredibly familiar to you. And in fact, if you engage in a regular yoga practice and you're familiar with ocean breath, this is the valving technique ultimately that we're talking about. If it's not part of your thing from the yoga world and it's brand new to you, this can sort of go one of three ways. I find in working with people privately that sometimes people have a really difficult time sort of getting this. And so I'm going to offer a couple of different alternatives to accomplish the same purpose. There's a second group of people who sort of get it usually more with the exhale than the inhale at first, and ultimately they catch on. And then there are some people that it's just like no big deal. Yeah, I can understand this and I can do it, and it's easy for me. So it doesn't matter what category you fall into. The intention of it is the important part. So the three techniques, just to say them out loud, first is called pursed lip breathing, which is done through the mouth, and I'll demonstrate that in a second. And then the second is essentially ocean breath, but it's done through the mouth instead of through the nose. And it's sometimes called ha-o breath. And people describe it as Darth Vader breath because it sounds a lot like that respiration that Darth Vader had. And then the third is full-on ujjayi or ocean breath, which is done entirely through the nose. The mouth is closed, and it's that same action of the ha-o breath. So without further ado, let's get to it. And I'm just going to very briefly go through these and demonstrate, and then we can work it all together in the practice. So the pursed lip breathing thing is fairly easy. The idea is to make the idea of any of these practices where we're using this technique of valving is to make a smaller opening for the air to pass through. And so we can do it in the throat in this case, or do it through the mouth using the lips. So to do it with pursed lips goes something like this. You can try it. I'm not watching. So you'll notice that there's some resistance to work against, which strengthens the diaphragm, the primary breathing muscle, and it also serves to lengthen and control the breath. So that is the first technique to accomplish that. And then to get into ocean breath, for some people, it's easier to sort of present it as a mouth breathing technique and then ultimately bring it to the nose. And so, we usually say, it's like whispering on the exhale, like you go, and then you keep that contraction of the throat and inhale. And the problem with this technique, try it. The problem with this technique is the throat gets really dry in the inhale, which is why I happen to have my tea here. So it doesn't work real great for long term, but just to get the idea, we're trying to get get the throat muscles trained, the glottis trained, so that it can remain partially contracted through both inhale and exhale. That's the idea. So the exhale, usually no problem for people. The inhale can be more problematic. We go from the second to the third method of doing this, which is what we call ocean breath generally in the West. And it sounds like this. So just like in the ha, o, we're contracting the throat muscles and we're keeping them contracted throughout the breath. So that's the idea. Let's do a practice, shall we? And we'll include that as part of the practice. So this particular practice I call internal, external, and environmental respiration. And it's a guided meditation, as we do here. So go ahead and find a comfortable position for your seat. And we want to feel upright, yet relaxed, alert, yet soft. And then close your eyes if it's comfortable for you. This, by the way, is a technique that you can practice, this valving technique. You can practice, pretty much any time of day or night. From an energetic perspective, they would typically say that in the yoga world that this is langana, which means it's relaxing. And particularly if it's used with deep abdominal breathing, so you're using a belly breath, it can be quite relaxing. So as you begin to settle in, cultivate a sense of being, a sense of inhabiting this body in this space during this time. And then without manipulating your breath at all, just take 3 nice full inhales followed by 3 nice complete exhales. And then let's first try that pursed lip technique. So take an inhale with pursed lips and exhale. Do that 2 more times. Full but not strained. Once more. And then relax your breath. And just spend a moment noticing whether anything has shifted in your attention or your energy. All right, and then let's try the open mouth technique using ha and o, like Darth Vader. So take a deep inhale. Exhale. Inhale. Again. One more time. Relax your breath and pause. And then if you care to, you can try the full-on technique, taking a deep inhale, exhaling ocean breath through the nose. Go ahead and relax your breath. No effort. And this is where we say, allow the body to breathe itself. So bring your awareness into a settled breath wherever you experience it, at the nose, maybe chest, rib cage, belly, throat. And as an observer, without analyzing or concluding anything, just notice the rhythm of the inflow and outflow of your breath. Watching whatever thoughts or feelings or even body sensations may interrupt that process of observing the breath. Recognizing the transient nature of those distractions, and then steering awareness back to rest on the process of breathing. Recalling that whenever our focus on the present moment is interrupted, that interruption is just a natural manifestation of a mind trained to move, a mind less familiar with resting awareness in the moment. And now consider uh, for a moment that in the world of yoga in ancient times, they concluded that with the advent of the breath into the body comes something called prana, or life force. From a Western perspective, we might correlate that life force, that prana, to be present in the oxygen provided in the air and entering into our lungs. Prana is not the oxygen, but it's the energy that is the substrate of the oxygen. Can you imagine how the energy of the breath enters into the nose, through the throat, and then leads into the main branches of the lungs, to the left and the right lobes? Can you imagine or sense how the energy of the breath spreads into these countless pathways inside the lungs, finding thousands and thousands of smaller and smaller channels deep into the heart of the lungs? Can you imagine on a microscopic level how the energy of the breath reaches into these tiny, tiny little clusters, grape-like clusters called alveoli? And the surface of each of these little clusters has a really, really thin membrane, which allows the transfer of energy into and out of the bloodstream. And can you imagine how this exchange taking place in hundreds of millions of these little grape-shaped membranes occurs in each and every breath? This is a process that's called external respiration, the exchange of gases from the air we breathe entering into the bloodstream and releasing carbon dioxide back out into the atmosphere each breath we take. And then as the blood circulates through the body, can you imagine that the energy of the breath is carried to every cell, all 70 or 100 billion of them? And each cell takes in this energy with oxygen and releases carbon dioxide with its energy back into the bloodstream. And this is called internal respiration. And bring your awareness for a moment back to the whole of your body, resting in this space, breathing each breath. Notice each in-breath as it enters your nose. Notice each exhale being sent back out into space. And consider just for a moment that as carbon dioxide is released from your body, it makes its way out into the room and some of it at least outdoors. Can you consider for a moment that each breath pressed out of your body combines with each breath released from every other body, every other being, and eventually makes its way into nature? Imagine the underside of each leaf of each plant across the surface of the entire planet, absorbing this energy. And how each plant releases energy as oxygen from the water that it absorbs back into the atmosphere, back into space, to make a return trip and eventually come back again into our bodies for another cycle. Although plants don't technically breathe in the sense of respiration, this is often called environmental respiration, the exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen coming from the earth. Bring your awareness once again back to your body. Sense yourself sitting in this space. And let's finish with another practice session, starting with pursed lip breathing. So go ahead and begin to breathe through your nose softly with pursed lips. Inhale and exhale. 2 more times. Relax your effort. Notice. And then try the Ha-O method. Deep inhale. And then relax your effort for just a moment. And finally, if you wish and are willing, try it through the nose. Deep inhale. And relax your breath. So a guy I've taken a fair amount of training from, his name is Leslie Kaminoff. And he says, the harder we try to breathe better, the more we get in our own way. We're used to using greater effort to get better results. It's hard work not to try so hard. And this is the essence of these breathing practices in this category called pranayama. It's not a contest. It's not a reflection of who we are, depending on how well we feel like we're breathing or not. And so this is really an occasion from a mindfulness standpoint that we're asked to really rest in the process, let the process take its course, and just, have some awareness of it. Sound familiar? A lot like all of the other practices that we've done. All right. So a few last things. I would encourage you all, even if you use ocean breath already for yoga practice and you have your own personal practice, I would encourage you to spend 10 minutes, maybe divided into 5-minute segments, practicing one of these breathing techniques. And it's interesting over time how you can, with attention and intention, refine an ocean breath that you may have in your practice if you're a long-term yoga practitioner, have had for a dozen years or whatever. So just because you can do it doesn't mean that it can't be done with greater refinement. And so that could be a really good mindfulness practice, 10 minutes of ocean breath. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed today's episode, please hit the like button and leave a comment if you have a mindful breathing practice as part of your routine. For more great videos on yoga beyond the mat, please subscribe, and you can check out the website, stevewhiteyoga.com. Until next time, keep breathing better.